Hello, everybody. So today we are going to be looking at linking relationships. Now, it's important to understand that the linking of activities in a project is what actually creates the schedule sequence. And it is the major contributor to the finish date or the timeline of the project. It is what gives the Gantt chart its typical appearance of um, the bars moving from left to right, moving through from the start date through until the finish date. And it is what puts the activities or the tasks into sequence and order. Now, we are going to move on. There are four different types of relationships. Now, the first one that is probably the most common is the finish to start. Then you get the start to start, which is the SS relationship, the finish to finish, FF, and of course the start to finish, which is SF. I'm going to go into each of these. So let's start off by looking at the finish to start relationship. This is probably the most common relationship. So task A or the predecessor must finish before task B starts, B being the successor. And if A, of course, is delayed or runs a little late, it will mean that B starts late and very likely run late. And if it's on the critical path, will cause the whole project to run late. A finish to start relationship, we can add a lag. First of all, we'll deal with the positive lag. And that is where A runs, it finishes, and then B doesn't start immediately. There's a lag or a delay of a number of days, and then B starts. A good example of this is where you are finishing off the roof and that the roof must be completed before the installation of the interior ceilings. If we decide to wait for a few days, 3 days, say, after the roofing is finished to start on the ceilings, an example of why you would do that is to ensure that no leaks occur. Then this would be an example of a finish to start relationship with lag, positive lag. Then there is finish to start again with a negative lag. And this is a case where A runs, but before A actually finishes, B starts. So B is in a finish to start relationship with A, but it is brought forward a little. We call that a lead or a negative lag. And that means that B starts a little bit before, as much as the lag dictates, A finishes. Now, this is, of course, is a way of speeding up the project and causing the project to finish a little earlier. Let's just go through an example of this. You might start your landscaping, which is the successor task. In other words, the one which is dependent on the predecessor task, say 2 days before the exterior painting, which is your predecessor task, is fully completed so that you can stay on schedule. So it might be naturally in a more finish to start relationship where the painting is finished first and then landscaping starts. But to speed up the schedule, it may be possible, perhaps in another part of the building, to start with the landscaping before the actual painting is finished. And that would be an example of a negative lag or a lead, where B is brought forward a little. The next type of relationship is the start to start relationship. This is where B, the successor task, cannot start until A has started. Again, if A is delayed, it means B cannot start until A has started, so B would be delayed. And that's SS, start to start. And let's go through an example of adding now a lag. So with a start to start, you can have a lag, positive lag or a negative lag. And an example of a positive lag would be that two tasks, one which is the pouring of the foundation of a house, and then the task of framing the structure. This is an example where framing can begin only after foundation has been poured. So it's in a start to start relationship. But we could decide that the framing should start 2 days after the foundation work begins to allow for initial setting. So a little bit of setting of the concrete, 2 days delay can decrease the risk of cracking and so on. And this is a good example of a start to start with a 2 day lag, positive lag or delay. Then, of course, we can also get a start to start with a negative lag. And this is where you have B, the successor task, pulled forward a little. So this is a case where B would actually, in fact, start a little before A starts. We can consider the task of installing electrical wiring, which is the predecessor task, and the subsequent task or successor task of hanging drywall. The drywall installation team might begin their work in areas where the electrical wiring is not yet in place. In other words, starting a little before electrical wiring starts, even though electrical task hasn't started. This could lead to starting the drywall installation 2 days before electrical work starts. And this would be an example of a negative lag with a start to start relationship. Then you get the finish to finish relationship. Here, B, the successor task, cannot finish until A is finished. And of course, B's starting point isn't so important here, but its finish date is important. So it cannot finish before A finishes. And if A is delayed in its finish, then B will be delayed in its finish. And this, of course, could delay the whole project. And let's look at an example of a finish to finish with lag. So now this is a case where B can finish a little after A has finished. An example of this is where your interior painting, which is your successor task, can finish, say, 4 days after all the windows have been installed, which is your predecessor task, to ensure enough ventilation for drying. So there's always some reason why you would delay a task. This, of course, would delay the schedule if these tasks are on the critical path. And this is an example of a finish to finish relationship with a positive lag of 4 days. You can also have a negative lag with a finish to finish relationship. And this is where B would be allowed to finish a little before A finishes. And an example of this is, in order to speed up the handover of the property, okay, this is at the end of your project, the task of cleaning the construction site, which is your successor task, has to be completed 1 day before the final snag list has been completed, which of course is your predecessor task. This could be just so that when final snagging happens, things are neat and tidy. And this would be an example of a finish to finish with a negative lag of 1 day, negative 1 day, or a lead, in fact. So it finishes a little before the predecessor task finishes. And then there is a final type, the start to finish type. Here, B cannot finish before A starts. So it's really kind of the flip relationship to a finish to start relationship. And an example of this would be where the night guard of a security company, which is your successor task, cannot finish his or her task until the day guard, which is your predecessor task, actually starts. That is an example of a start to finish relationship. And this is very rarely used. Often you can get by with the other 3 relationships, and this would be used quite infrequently.